Welcome to the Mystery and History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. By the water, in a portrait made in Germany in the 20th century, Christiane Schmidtmer appears posing outdoors, reflecting the public image created for actresses and models of the period. Born in 1939, she worked in film, fashion, and later published memoirs. The photo also records the style and publicity of the era. A veteran of the Great War sits on a Berlin sidewalk in 1923, wearing his old uniform while asking passers-by for help. The record illustrates the severe social and economic crisis that struck Germany after the conflict, showing the abandonment of former fighters amid hyperinflation. American service members wait for the moment to land from a barge during the Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944. Operation Overlord marked a turning point in World War II by establishing an Allied front in Western Europe and weakening the occupying forces' control in the region. An aerial view of Edinburgh, captured in 1920, reveals the city beneath dense clouds with a biplane in full flight. To obtain such striking images, the photographer had to lean out of the aircraft with one leg tied to the seat by a rope. The dangerous method shows the technical effort of the time. A London police officer uses a face mask amid the dense fog that covered the British capital in 1952. The extreme weather event caused by industrial pollution reduced street visibility and required emergency measures to protect public safety. Painters work without safety equipment at the top of the Woolworth Building in New York during 1926. The image captures the boldness of the workers who maintained the city's skyscrapers, reflecting an era of rapid vertical expansion and labor rules still in an early stage of development. Two sisters run toward their father, who returns home after serving in the military during 1940. The soldier, seated in a wheelchair, opens his arms to welcome his daughters on a sunny lawn. The emotional reunion illustrates the human impact and physical consequences of the events of that time. Window washers balance high above the ground on a skyscraper on 48th Street in New York during 1958. The city was at the height of its vertical expansion, and maintaining the glass facades required extreme courage from the workers who kept Manhattan's skyline shining. Two shoeshine boys carry their toolboxes through the busy streets of New York during the 1890s. Child labor was a common reality in urban centers of the Victorian era, where young people sought a living amid economic growth and intense social change in the United States. Workers labor on dizzying steel structures high above New York's skyline during 1925. The absence of modern safety equipment highlights the boldness required to raise the skyscrapers that would define the look of America's largest city during its golden age of construction. Hundreds of miners and fortune seekers work in the Kimberley Diamond Mine in South Africa during 1872. The discovery of a gem weighing 83.5 carats drew a crowd to the region, resulting in a landscape marked by deep excavations and intense economic activity. Thousands of military personnel at Camp Dodge in Des Moines arranged themselves in an impressive formation to create the silhouette of the Statue of Liberty in 1918. The aerial record in Iowa shows the collective effort and patriotism of American troops, using 18,000 men to form the symbolic monument. More than 3,000 workers occupy the beams and floors of the imposing steel structure of the Chase Manhattan Bank in New York in August 1964. The group portrait marks the final stage of the skyscraper's construction, celebrating the labor force that shaped the financial skyline of the American metropolis. An aerial view reveals the scale of Hoover Dam being built on the Colorado River during the 1930s. The monumental project became a milestone in civil engineering and provided jobs for thousands during the Great Depression, forever changing the landscape and the distribution of power. Two girls have fun racing while riding sheep in the Cornwall region of England during 1969. The spontaneous record captures an unusual moment of childhood leisure in the British countryside, highlighting interaction with animals in a rural scene full of movement and joy. The concrete locks of the Panama Canal appear in the final stage of construction during 1913. The scale of the civil engineering project reveals immense walls and a dry channel bed where rails were installed to transport materials, securing the strategic connection between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Workers labor on assembling the imposing structure of the Hindenburg airship in Friedrichshafen during 1935. The image details the use of tall ladders to cover the German aircraft, revealing the monumental scale and complex engineering needed to make transatlantic flights possible. An armed forces operator uses an acoustic locator at Bowling Field in 1921, handling huge metal cones to detect aircraft by sound. This air listening technology came before the invention of radar, allowing defense forces to monitor the sky through sound amplification. Behind the scenes at the New York Times in 1942, the manual assembly of sports pages required absolute precision from typesetters. Each metal block and photoplate was carefully placed into heavy forms, reflecting the physical effort needed to keep the public informed during a time of conflict. A service station worker changes a car tire in Southeast Washington in 1942. The owner waits beside the vehicle while the mechanic works on the sunny sidewalk. The scene illustrates urban dependence on cars and everyday life in the United States during the 1940s. British driver Graham Hill places a Nikon camera on top of his Bell helmet during the Monaco Grand Prix in 1962. This pioneering effort aimed to record images of the Monte Carlo circuit from a new perspective. The improvised mount demanded major physical effort in the middle of the track's curves. A rustic elevator appears on the first level of the Eiffel Tower during the early stage of its construction in 1887. The record details the complex lattice of iron beams and the presence of workers at the base of the Paris structure, revealing the technical challenges of raising the monument that would become the symbol of France. A maintenance worker walks along one of the suspension cables of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco during 1947. John Gutman's photograph reveals the constant danger faced by the workers who cared for the iconic steel structure hanging above the cold waters of California Bay. A technical illustration from 1936 details a bold proposal to modify the structure of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. The architectural project aimed to build circular ramps and suspended roadways to allow automobiles to reach the monument's second level, reflecting the era's enthusiasm for the expansion of motor culture. Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman to travel into space, presents an insignia to American astronaut Neil Armstrong in 1970. The symbolic meeting between pioneers from rival superpowers took place at the height of the space race, showing a rare moment of diplomacy and mutual respect among explorers of the cosmos. The front cone of the R-5A rocket and the dog-modeled appear on display at the Kapustin Yar test range on August 27, 1958. The Soviet record details the technological components recovered after the space mission returned, highlighting the first scientific experiments with living beings during the space race. Princess Elizabeth smiles for an official portrait in the gardens of Buckingham Palace in October 1942. During World War II, the future Queen wore modest clothing and accepted breaks with protocol to support the British wartime effort, symbolizing the resilience of the monarchy during the conflict. The mystic Grigory Rasputin appears surrounded by admirers at a social gathering in Russia in 1914. The image records the influence the peasant held over members of the aristocracy and Russian society shortly before the revolution. The domestic setting reflects the prestige he achieved at the imperial court. Al Capone and his associates appear in a photograph from the 1930s wearing sharp suits and typical hats. The group poses in front of a wooden structure with signboards revealing the visual style and stance of influential figures who shaped the social and controversial scene in the United States. Robert Duvall holds cue cards for Marlon Brando during the filming of The Godfather in the United States in 1971. The method was used by the lead actor to keep spontaneity in the scenes of Francis Ford Coppola's classic. This behind-the-scenes moment reveals curious techniques of film production. Alfred Hitchcock appears dressed in period women's clothing in early 1960, showing his well-known sense of humor and taste for the grotesque. The filmmaker often used disguises and quick appearances in his works, building a playful connection with his audience and strengthening his personal mark in suspense cinema. Emperor Hirohito of Japan walks through the gardens of Disneyland in California, accompanied by Mickey Mouse in October 1975. The historic visit symbolized a period of diplomacy and cultural openness between the two nations after the war, bringing traditional monarchy together with the biggest icon of entertainment. Sophia Loren poses on a balcony with the canals of Venice in the background during 1955 in Italy. The actress embodies the glamour of European cinema in the 1950s, a period when her international career was rising rapidly, securing her image as one of the greatest cultural and fashion icons of the 20th century. Actress Louise Albritton poses in a relaxed way beside a bicycle during a photo shoot carried out in 1944. Known for her work in Universal Pictures comedies and dramas, she embodies the style and vitality of Hollywood during the height of the golden age of cinema. Models prepare behind the scenes at the Mark Foy's department store in Sydney during a fashion show around 1947. The record captures the organized chaos behind the curtains, with shelves full of shoes and costume adjustments, reflecting the return of glamour and consumption in post-war Australia. Model Naomi Campbell walks down a city street accompanied by several Dalmatian dogs in a photo shoot for American Vogue in 1990. The photograph, titled "Seeing Spots," was taken by Peter Lindbergh and highlights the high fashion look of the period. The record became a visual milestone in fashion. Ruth Disney appears beside her older brother Walt in a family record made in 1906. The children pose in front of a wooden house, wearing clothing typical of childhood in the early 20th century. This simple scene comes before the founding of a worldwide entertainment empire. Two elegantly dressed women wait on the platform at Gare de Lyon in Paris in front of a modern streamlined locomotive in 1937. The train's futuristic design symbolizes French railway technological progress of the time, contrasting with the station's classic architecture and the passengers' refined fashion. Lit up at night, Rockefeller Center appears in New York City, United States, in December 1933, shortly after the completion of its main tower. The complex brought together offices, theaters, and commercial areas during the Great Depression. The photograph records the city's vertical growth and the use of electric light in the urban landscape of the early 20th century. Passengers wait to board at the Greyhound bus terminal in Los Angeles with access to individual coin-operated televisions. On August 12, 1969, the facility offered seats with built-in ashtrays, reflecting the social habits of the time. Paid entertainment was common in public places. A technician carefully performs maintenance on complex telephone lines in the Communications Central Building on East 30th Street in New York in 1938. Manual labor was essential to keep the metropolis connected, working on huge panels that formed the backbone of the urban electrical network. A British mail carrier uses a cargo tricycle fitted with a large front basket in 1934 while working for the Royal Mail Service. The vehicle made bulky deliveries easier on the streets of England, demonstrating the efficiency of postal transport in the 1930s. Benny's Grocery in Sylvania appears in 1939, showing prices for goods such as lard and salt painted directly on the doors. An old gas pump stands on the front sidewalk, revealing the multifunctional nature of rural stores in southern Georgia. Shopkeepers wait for customers at the entrance of a business in 1950, surrounded by shelves filled with products such as coffee and tea. The storefront displays signs indicating the sale of assorted goods, reflecting the everyday life of small urban businesses of the time. A crowd of children takes part in a party on October 20th, 1938, in the town of Shafter in Kern County, California. The event brings families together during a period of major agricultural migration to the American West, when community celebrations like this helped strengthen social ties amid the hardships of the Great Depression. A woman demonstrates the versatility of a multifunctional piece of furniture that combined a television, radio, and a complete bar set in 1951. This household innovation reflected post-war technological optimism and the desire to centralize entertainment and leisure in one sophisticated piece inside the home. The interior of a Volvo P1800 in 1967 reveals a bold technology for its time, with Manchester City player Mike Summerby demonstrating the record player built into the dashboard. The device aimed to bring the musical experience of home turntables to life on the road. A cyclist shows off his custom chopper-style bicycle on the streets of Chicago in the early 1970s. The culture of home-built modifications and extravagant design reflected the spirit of freedom and the rebellious look of American youth at the time, directly inspired by the famous Long Fork motorcycles. 5 women posed to demonstrate the dramatic evolution of women's swimsuits between 1875 and 1927. The transition shows the change from the long, heavy garments of the late 19th century to shorter and more functional designs in the 1920s, reflecting women's new social freedom. 5 women pose in a garden during a swimming lesson in 1885, wearing the heavy bathing outfits typical of the Victorian era. The record documents the beginning of the sport's growing popularity among women, an activity that challenged the strict social and clothing rules of that period. A nomadic family poses in front of their living wagon in London in 1877 in a record made by photographer John Thompson. The group shows rustic clothing and household items hanging from the wooden structure, revealing the conditions of itinerant life and social marginalization in the Victorian era. Visitors rest among stone monuments in the Greyfriars Cemetery in Edinburgh around 1850. The site is a historic landmark of the Scottish capital, known for its legends and detailed funerary architecture, serving as a place for reflection and preservation of British social memory in the 19th century. The imposing stone cross in the foreground marks the sacred ground of a cemetery in Pennsylvania, contrasting with the dense industrial zone in the background. Recorded in 1936, Walker Evans's photograph reveals the closeness between urban life and the smokestacks of Bethlehem Steel, the engine of the economy. An aerial view in September 1940 records Greenwich Street in New York from the perspective of an elevated structure. The composition details the alignment of residential and commercial buildings toward Battery Park while tracks cut through the urban scene. The record forms part of a visual study of New York architecture. Beachgoers and pedestrians enjoy the day on the boardwalk at Asbury Park on the New Jersey coast in a classic 1905 record. The scene displays the fashion of the time, with structured hats and formal clothing, while the seaside infrastructure expanded to welcome the growing leisure tourism of the middle class. Women wearing traditional cloaks sell birds in wicker baskets on the streets of Galway, Ireland, around 1910. The everyday scene reveals the popular trade in ducks and chicks in front of an iron fence and stone buildings. The record preserves aspects of local social and economic life from the time. A Japanese street vendor walks along a street in Kyoto during the 1930s, carrying an impressive load of goods on his wooden cart. His inventory includes brooms, wicker baskets, and various handmade household items, showing traditional commerce and the resilience of small merchants in pre-war Japan. 4 Dutch boys pose for a portrait in 1904, wearing traditional clothing that includes wide pants and the iconic wooden clogs. The group of children faces the camera on dry ground in front of rustic houses, revealing aspects of popular dress and rural daily life in the Netherlands. The large Noonan family fills every available space of a convertible automobile for an outing in Massachusetts during the 1920s. The couple and their 13 children pose for the historic record, showing the design of vehicles of the time and the growth of large families in the early 20th century. The Richardson tandem biplane seaplane rests on the waters of the Potomac River in 1916, surrounded by its technical team. At the edges of the image, the Richardson brothers pose in formal clothing and bowler hats, celebrating aeronautical engineering during a period of rapid innovation in air travel. London operated the innovative Electrobus in 1906, demonstrating the early use of electric power in public transportation. The double-decker vehicle carried passengers through the streets of the English capital with its license plate LC 5D768 visible. The technology sought alternatives to horses before the dominance of the internal combustion engine. A nanny drives a promoter through a British park during the 1920s, demonstrating a motorized innovation of the era. The hybrid vehicle allowed mothers and workers to transport babies with less physical effort, combining a classic baby carriage with a mechanical driving platform. Professional typists operate their typewriters at improvised outdoor tables, offering document writing services to passers-by. The scene reveals a system of immediate bureaucratic help in a time when access to writing technology was limited to specialists in the trade. A horsewoman rides elegantly using a side saddle, a technique common for upper-class women between the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Her formal outfit includes a top hat and a fitted bodice, reflecting the social rules of etiquette and the strict riding fashion of that historical period. Maya women on the Yucatan Peninsula appear around 1952 wearing the traditional huipil, an embroidered garment that carries centuries of cultural heritage. The record preserves the continuity of Mexican indigenous traditions amid the social changes of the 20th century. The Acropolis of Athens rises impressively in 1869, revealing the Parthenon surrounded by a still lightly developed cityscape and dirt roads. Hadrian's Arch stands out in the foreground, serving as a historic gateway between the ancient city and the new paths emerging in Greece. The waterfront in 1900 shows a curious precursor to wheeled sail vehicles, revealing how engineering tried to adapt wind power for land-based leisure. 4 passengers in formal clothing of the era occupy the light structure, using air currents along the shore. A woman wearing a red coat looks out over the frozen vastness of a mountain pass in the Pyrenees in France during 1956. Beside her, a vehicle with license plate 8341TT1X rests on a road surrounded by high walls of snow. The color image highlights the contrast between human presence and the harshness of the European winter. Salvador Dali and his wife Gala posed together during the summer of 1935, displaying an avant-garde style that reflects the couple's eccentric personality. The record captures the closeness between the surrealist master and his inspiring muse, highlighting the fashion of the time in a relaxed outdoor setting. A family enjoys outdoor leisure in 1920 using an innovative tent attached to an automobile for roadside camping. The adapted vehicle serves as the base for the canvas structure, allowing a meal at a folding table, while children and adults enjoy the new freedom of motor travel. The enormous residential building in Alba Iulia slides over metal rails to make room for a new avenue. On May 27, 1987, Romanian engineers split the structure into two sections and moved them sideways. Residents stayed inside during the process, maintaining the local urban routine. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.